Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our third edition of Conversations with the Council. Today is September 3rd, and we are excited to have a conversation today about economic development in the African heritage community in the state of Minnesota. So we just want to thank you for joining us. As always, we are joined here via webinar, and also we are live streaming on our Facebook page. And so if you want someone to see this conversation live, or even if you want to share this conversation after we convene for today, it will be on our Facebook page. So please share it out to your networks. We are excited to have this summer series, Conversations with the Council, as a means to have critical conversations about policy issues in our community, starting with a conversation but ending with action. And so thank you again for joining us. And hopefully we are gaining new partners in this fight as we as a council continue to serve and advocate for our community at the state level. And so I'm going to spend just a few moments just introducing the council and talking a little bit about who we are. And then I will introduce our guest panelists for today, who are some amazing community leaders throughout our state doing some very critical work. And we can learn a lot from them. So I'm so grateful for them joining us today. So just to talk briefly about the mission of the council. So the Minnesota legislature empowered the Council for Minnesotans of African Heritage to ensure that people of African heritage fully and effectively participate in and equitably benefit from the political, social, and economic resources, policies, and procedures of the state of Minnesota. So we are here to serve our communities and make sure our community can participate in these processes and also benefit from them at the state. Just briefly touching on the work of the council, we conduct statewide community outreach and engagement. I forgot to introduce myself, that's wild. So my name is Amber Jones. I'm actually the outreach coordinator for the council for Minnesotans of African Heritage, and conducting the statewide community outreach and engagement is largely in my wheelhouse at the council. And so not only are we focusing on our communities here in the Twin Cities, but we also want to make sure we're focusing on our community partners throughout Greater Minnesota as well, including our hubs in Duluth, in Rochester, in St. Cloud, and Mankato, and also with our community members just throughout the state as well. We also advance legislative policies with a direct impact on the African heritage community. So we do a lot of work to make sure that what we hear in communities is being translated into policy change as well. And then we also advise lawmakers in our executive leadership as noted in the mission. So we are a direct advisory space to the governor's office and to the state legislature, including the leadership as well. And so we want to leverage those connecting points, those spaces of influence in benefit for our community. So actually, before we go into the panelists, I want to turn it over to our council member co-host for today, Council Member Jude Nandi, who's been serving on our council for some time now. He is joining us today to also participate in this conversation and to give some words of support and remarks from our council board. So Council Member Nandi, if you want to give your welcome, that would be great. Oh, you're on mute.
Can you hear me now? Cool. It happens all the time. My name is Jude Nadi. I'm a board member. I welcome you all to this important meeting, especially our panelists and guests. I spent greater part of my summer working on Minnesota African Coalition COVID-19 task force. We focus on helping micro businesses hit hard by COVID-19 in our community. It is necessary to do so because, according to Star Tribune, half of Black workers in Minnesota have lost their work during this pandemic. While unemployment in the state has fallen to 7.7%, Blacks' unemployment is still at double digits. There is a great fear in our community that half of the Black-owned businesses may not survive next year because of this pandemic. According to the data from the Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development, DEED, our population in this state is 7%, but we account for 22% of all COVID cases, with more deaths disproportionately to our community. We are compassionate people and care for the most vulnerable. 11% of us work in healthcare. However, Blacks who work from home is negative 6%, that is minus. This one hits home extremely hard. Our homelessness is at a staggering 40%, so we account for almost half of all the homelessness in the state. In any way we look at these numbers, it is not good for us economically or otherwise. But the good news is that in today's roundtable, we will hear from our panelists who are making our community whole, making us better. So we're in the same boat and we'll ride together to recovery. So welcome our panelists and have a nice discussion this evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Nandi, and just thank you for your support and your service to the council. And so we're going to jump back. We're going to jump back into our introductions for today and get started with introducing our panelists. So I am super excited to introduce our panelists for today. All are doing great work in our community. Some of them I get to call friends. So our first panelist for today is Samuel Ndelly, who is the Director of Employer Inclusivity at the Center for Economic Inclusion. He was born and raised in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and is a proud alum of the University of Minnesota Twin Cities, where he graduated from the School of Journalism with a degree in strategic communications, focusing on advertising and public relations. He has worked as a business consultant for MEDA for the past 3 years before joining CEI this year. And he worked on BIPOC, focusing on working with BIPOC entrepreneurs to help them grow their business by connecting them to a number of resources, access to capital, educational and networking opportunities, and more. Currently, he's at the Center for Economic Inclusion. At CEI, Sam works to equip private and public leaders with knowledge, tools, and awareness to identify and replace exclusive policies, practices, and behaviors that restrict economic growth with new, inclusive, market responsive approaches, all with a racial equity lens. Outside of his work, he's also the co-founder of Gravity, which is an organization focusing on helping people of color break into the tech startup industry in Minnesota. He's also a board member at the Minnesota Black Chamber of Commerce, Transcend IT, and Forge North Leadership Council. Sam is also a 2017 Josie R. Johnson Leadership Academy Fellow from the African American Leadership Forum. He serves on the Alumni Advisory Council for the Leadership Academy. He's also a proud member of Phi Beta Sigma and is the current chapter president of the Zeta Nu Sigma graduate chapter. So we are thankful to have you. We're so grateful to have you, Sam. Our next panelist is the fierce Felicia Perry. She is the executive director of the West Broadway Business and Area Coalition, which serves the Northside business community. She brings a wealth of experience in marketing, entrepreneurship, project management, finance, accounting, and community engagement to the corridor. She currently serves as the co-chair for the Minneapolis Forward Community Now Coalition. Her dedication to community has led her to work with the West Broadway Business and Area Coalition previously as a program manager, transforming her work as an activator of vacant spaces into a vehicle of economic and social development. Using art as a catalyst to create a vibrant business corridor, she managed projects such as the 3-day Flow Northside Arts Crawl and Open Streets West Broadway. She serves on the executive committee for the Association for Black Economic Power, the Mayday Council, and is a Northside Awesome Fund trustee. Felicia is an entrepreneur, not entrepreneur, but entrepreneur, based in Minneapolis, specializing in fashion design, performance art, and curating spaces. She builds on her passion for journalism as an on-air host of Design Her Life at KRSM Community Radio Station, where she interviews women and non-binary identifying entrepreneurs about designing and creating their unique life and career paths. Felicia is a springboard for the Arts 2020 Artist Fellow and Artist Career Consultant. Thank you for being here, Felicia. We are so grateful to have you. Our last two panelists are ChaQuana McEntyre. She is the President and Executive Director of Family Rise Together, which provides a variety of services in the Duluth area, including workforce development and entrepreneurial training for youth, fathers, and formerly incarcerated individuals. ChaQuana has dedicated her life to acquiring experience around passionate and purposeful people strategy, which has accumulated in the launch of Family Rise Together. ChaQuana is an author, speaker, entrepreneur, and social worker in the St. Louis County of Minnesota. She has a keen sense of facilitating uncomfortable forums around fatherhood, systemic oppression for the paternal family system, and cross-cultural discussions. She has had the opportunity to participate in a variety of facilitating courses, workshops, and seminars that have allowed for a broad resource base on which to build her career. Thank you so much, ChaQuana, for joining us today. And then finally, our last panelist is Danielle Mkali, who is the Director of Cooperative Transformation and Healing at Nexus Community Partners. Danielle is the founder of the North Star Black Cooperative Fellowship, which is an initiative of Nexus, supporting and creating the practices and community organizing models for cooperative ownership of land, labor, and housing. Her mission is to uplift the resources needed to unleash self-determination, freedom, and our legacy of Black cooperation. Danielle also directed the Media Justice Project and community building efforts at Main Street Project and was a co-founder of Speak, an 8-month community organizing training with Hope Community. In addition, Danielle chairs the City of Lakes Community Land Trust Advisory and serves on the KRSM Radio Advisory Board in South Minneapolis. She studied education at Minneapolis Community Technical College and African American and African Studies at the University of Minnesota, like me. Thank you, Danielle, for joining us today, and we're so grateful to have you. So as you can see, we have a fierce and amazing lineup of panelists today, so we are not going to hold you any longer. We are going to get started. So if you are joining us through the webinar, or if you're joining us online on Facebook, please do not hesitate to ask any questions throughout this conversation. We are going to have a Q&A section after our panelist presentation. So please comment your questions. We are going to see them and we're going to funnel them to our panelists. So we're going to get started with each panelist just delivering some remarks, speaking to how their work is contributing to the economic development work needed here for our African heritage Minnesotans. They're going to briefly address from their vantage point some of the challenges they see in their work, as well as opportunities that they could be that we all could be pursuing. And so without further ado, we're going to turn it over to our first panelist, who is Felicia Perry, to get us started. Thank you.
Of course, this is happening just as a weird noise is going by my window. Welcome to the life of COVID-19. Let me just kind of refocus myself. So this is the question around the work that I'm already doing or I'm doing to support Minnesotans of African Heritage, which is such a, it's a really interesting question when I think about where I am in my work right now, because so much of my work by way of location, because it's so place-based, being located on West Broadway Avenue in North Minneapolis, an area that has a very high concentration of Black folks. it just ends up being, when I'm thinking about the beneficiaries of anything that I'm doing, these are the people who are my neighbors. I live here as well, so I end up being very close to the work in that way. So really anything that I do. So when I talk about the work that I do, even in the art and creative community, a lot of the beneficiaries of even that work is Black artists and entrepreneurs, creative entrepreneurs. I'm really trying to figure out how they fit into this ecosystem. And then the work at West Broadway, because our goal, our mission really is to create a vital and thriving West Broadway and Northside business business district and business ecosystem, it ends up that since such a concentration of Black folks are here, there's a great concentration of Black entrepreneurs. We have Black-owned businesses also on the West Broadway corridor. Even my board is comprised of predominantly Black business owners right here in North Minneapolis, right here on the West Broadway corridor. And it ends up being our own interest and really the work that we do because this is the community. So when I think about it from that lens, my work just automatically ties that to me. On a very personal level, everything I do must align with the liberation of Black people. And so it's just kind of, again, another guarantee that work and things that I'm involved in will be to that end or to that goal. So at West Broadway Business and Area Coalition, we do quite a bit of business technical assistance, business resource brokering, as well as providing resources. Right now, in the moment that we're in, we are managing a fund, probably the largest fund that's dedicated specifically to Northside businesses in this moment, in order to get those funds and get those donations into the hands of the business owners impacted by both COVID-19 and the recent uprising. And so it's been quite a journey just managing that responsibility, but there's every intention in that, making sure that businesses are able to get access to some resources when a lot of them are still telling me that they haven't been able to get access to some of the other resources offered by the city, by the county, the state, or federal government. And so in that, all of my work is like filling in a lot of those gaps in which these entities have not been able to fill at this point. And I'll just kind of leave it at that, open to other questions, but yeah.
Thank you so much, Felicia. We'll follow up on that as well as far as access to capital and funding in our conversation. Next, we're going to hear from ChaQuana.
Hi, everyone. I would like to thank you all for inviting me here. All of these beautiful Black people in Minnesota. Let me tell you, the world would think we don't exist. So I would just like to take a moment and bask in this glory of all this beauty. But one of the things that I'm focusing on as an entrepreneur is culturally specific technical assistance. Family Rise Together is an organization that I started in 2014. So I am the founder and the president, and we are intentional about ensuring that the information and the classes and workshops that we are creating for young adults as well as for adults is culturally specific. So we are talking about what was the economic development system around slavery. What was the economic development around the Black Wall Street? How do we get funding? Why were CDFIs founded? Because they were founded to put money in the hands of Black and brown people, and yet those millions of dollars from the SBA don't always make it to the Black and brown community, though those were infrastructures that was created on our behalf. And we're also being intentional about working with startup organizations. When we are thinking about African Americans and the economic developments within our communities, we don't often think about startups, because when most people think of startups, they think of a pilot program. And we need to change that trajectory and that understanding that just because we are serial entrepreneurs not failures. So in one part of the world, we look at our counterparts when they fail in business, they're looked at as serial entrepreneurs because they keep getting up and they keep trying. However, when it comes to the Black community, we're looked at as failures and should not even try again and should just go back to work. And so I am being intentional in the work that I am doing and the information that I am sharing, that we are serial entrepreneurs. You're going to name yourself a serial entrepreneur, and you're going to continue to title yourself as an entrepreneur. So if you start off in one industry, does not mean you don't have the right to move to another industry, because the reality is that an entrepreneur is mindful of how the industry is moving. So because of COVID-19, we know factually that there are industries that will never come back, such as, I don't know, buffets, right? So when I have people who are talking about hey, I want to start a restaurant, we're having real conversations of, is that something you really want to do in the middle of a pandemic when people are too afraid to check and eat food outside of their home because they're afraid they're going to die? And so that is what I have been working on for the last 6 years. And within the last year, we've been blessed enough, due to COVID and other issues in our world, we've been blessed enough to get a contract with the city of Duluth so that we can actually start offering funding to startup organizations that have worked with us previously, and also going to work with us in the future. And we also, with our youth entrepreneurship program with the city of Duluth, they're going to complete our program, work with me one-on-one and my facilitators, and they too will be offered funding so that they can get an LLC or still get the funding if they decide that they don't want to start a business. It's okay for people to go and get this training, and it's okay for them to decide that starting a business is not for me, but utilizing those transferable skills that they learned in those technical assistance workshops. So thank you.
Thank you, ChaQuana. And it's great to hear that you are being able to work with the city of Duluth so closely in this time to get funding out to people who are trying to start up businesses. That is great. We're going to continue to have that conversation. Next, we'll have remarks from Danielle.
Thank you. I'm going to share something. Or maybe. Let's see here.
All right.
Here we go, I think.
Where do you
All
see
right.
that bat is still there?
Mhm. All right. Here we go. So thank you so much for having me today. It's a real honor to be here. And of course, I'm here like all of us because of the work of those that came before us and our ancestors. So I just want to give thanks and appreciation. And like probably some of you at home, my kids are standing right next to me right now trying to figure out if they can ask me something, but you're gonna have to figure it out on your own, Naima. Okay, so I'm going to be talking a little bit about the community wealth building work that happens at Nexus Community Partners. I'm one of the team members there. My title is the Director of Cooperatives, Transformation, and Healing, and my work is both internal and external at the organization. Internally at the organization level, I'm working to make our nonprofit more democratic and work to have the staff have more say and more voice and operate more like a cooperative in the organization. The other folks on the team is our president, Rapab Mkali, my colleague, Mkali Shongwe, who is a community wealth building program manager, and then Benjamin Sai, who is a community wealth building program director, who leads the worker owner initiative, which I'll talk a little bit about in a moment. We are in our Sweet 16 year. We were founded in 2004. Terry Tao, who some of you may know, she's on staff at Nexus. She's a director, and she's been with the organization since 2004. We work really in 3 areas: authorship, leadership, and ownership. And we really see that all of these 3 areas are really what are essential to our communities being able to shape and create the lives and communities that we all deserve. So authorship is where our work all around community engagement really lies. So we have a Community Engagement Institute. Leadership is where you'll find efforts like the Boards and Commissions Leadership Institute, which works to place Black, Indigenous, and people of color on municipal, county, and state boards and commissions, and works with them to understand equity landscape, learn from policymakers, activists, and organizers that are pushing for a more racially and economically just Minnesota. Ownership is where community wealth building lives. Under community wealth building, we have a few different initiatives that I'll talk about today. The North Star is a 6-month cooperative economic fellowship. The picture here, some of you may have heard of before, is the ChaQuana Cooperative. It was founded in 1927 in the Rondo neighborhood in St. Paul. So you can see here, the picture's a little blurry, but you can see here that it was a social gathering. It was a place where younger Black folks in Rondo had organized to be able to come together, socialize in a safe space. Some of us are understanding now that there was Jim Crow in the North, and there certainly was. And so there weren't a lot of spaces for Black folks to come together. And ChaQuana first started to really just have this place where they could spend time, celebrate. They started to slowly integrate some ballrooms. Some of their light or white passing members would go to some ballrooms and create contracts to throw parties. And then the night of the party, you would have a Black party, and all of a sudden that ballroom couldn't really go back and be segregated. Eventually, ChaQuana became a credit union and also launched a cooperatively owned grocery store in Rondo as well. The North Star is really a fellowship that focuses on the history of Black cooperative economics, all the way up to present examples of Black cooperative economics. And we also work to support people that are looking to launch their own Black cooperative entities. For the first time ever, our next fellowship will be focused on housing cooperatives and land trusts. And I'll talk more about that a little bit later. The North Star has had 3 different cohorts. We've had 37 cohort members, all Black and African descent folks, majority women identified, fewer male and gender non-binary. We would love to have more men participate, and a few LGBTQIA identified. The types of cooperatives range from worker-owned businesses to housing cooperatives, artist cooperatives, investment co-ops, and credit unions. The Nexus Cooperative Development Fellowship is another program of Nexus. As we were working to establish and support more Black-led cooperatives in the Twin Cities, we realized that much of the cooperative development field, in terms of folks that support technical assistance for people that are building cooperatives or have cooperatives, was led by mostly white folks. And so Nexus created a 7-month fellowship program to work with Black, Indigenous, and people of color from around the Twin Cities with a variety of experiences and backgrounds, whether they were business developers, lawyers, social impact investment leaders, and work with them to understand how cooperatives work so that they could begin to work with some of the Black and brown cooperators that we were beginning to develop relationships with. The Nexus Alumni Fund. So both of those fellowships, the North Star and the Cooperative Development Fellowship, are about a half-year long. We know that a lot of what needs to happen to either launch a cooperative or to get your own cooperative TA business running isn't going to happen just in 7 months. And so we continue to work with alumni once they've completed the fellowship, and we make funds available to them to either, if you're a cooperative development fellow that's looking to outreach to emerging cooperators so we can support marketing, business filings, funds for business filings, things like that. And stipends are directed towards the alumni directly. These are just some of the things that you'll expect when you come out of the fellowship: help getting your cooperative formed, for the North Stars, financial support. We continue to provide ongoing work, and then from the Cooperative Development Fellows as well. Another initiative of Nexus is the next application. We'll be releasing that a little bit later this fall for North Star. And I'll be sure to reach out to Amber and make sure that we can try and get that information to all of you for the North Star Black Cooperative Fellowship. For the Cooperative Development Fellowship, there won't be another fellowship in 2020, but there will be more in the future. For the Nexus Worker Ownership Initiative, this is led by my colleague Benjamin Tsai. It was formerly led by Elena Gorder, who has gone on to lead the MCCD, the Metropolitan Consortium of Community Developers. So the Worker Ownership Initiative, in my simpleton talk, is really working with sole proprietor businesses, people that just own a business, maybe a family business, and having them sell their business to the workers and forming a worker cooperative. So nationally, you might have heard about this effort, but most of the single family businesses are owned by baby boomers. A lot of them are looking to retire. Some of them might sell their business to a larger corporation. Some of them might pass it down to a family member, but a lot of them might just shut their doors. And so Nexus and other partners around the country have been working to try to establish partnerships with some of these business owners to sell their businesses to their workers. And we've started that work here, and we've had a couple of successes with that effort here. How we do that is we work with public sector folks, private sector, work to get investment capital, and Nexus really importantly provides technical assistance to business owners and the workers to be able to make that transition from a sole proprietorship to a worker-owned establishment. Lastly, I just want to share that mutual aid has been a legacy of Black cooperation since the time that we were just recently enslaved Africans and while we were enslaved in this country. And it's recently emerged as another important piece. So I just wanted to uplift this that, you know, in the 1850s, we had folks that had mutual aid societies with 200,000 members that held $1 million in their mutual aid societies to help move money to support each other with healthcare, funeral expenses, things like that. And so in this time, I just want to uplift that this is like something that we should be really proud of, and also to acknowledge all the people that have been working really hard to do mutual aid, and that this is definitely one of the tools that we use as Black folks in economic cooperation. And that's all for now.
Thank you so much, Danielle, for your presentation. And then to close out this section, we will have Sam.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Thank you again, Amber, for inviting me to participate in this panel today. So as stated in my introduction earlier, I am the Director of Employer Inclusivity at the Center for Economic Inclusion. And the role, so what the center does, we're a nonprofit organization that's a public-private partnership that focuses on how we can inclusively grow our economy here in the Minneapolis-St. Paul region through working with corporations and local municipalities to provide opportunities for BIPOC people, entrepreneurs, and such. So that way we can bridge some of the gaps that we see here in the state of Minnesota. And we all know what those gaps are, so I'm not going to get too deep into those. But really in my role, which just joining the CEI about 2 months ago, my role consists of working on the private sector side. So I'm working with the corporations to help them become more racially inclusive. So everything I do is through a racial equity lens. And what that looks like is what we do is we have a product which we call our assessment, which consists of a survey, focus groups, interviews, and action planning with these corporations. And once they've completed that piece, they get feedback through a dashboard, and that also allows them to assess their organization through what we call the 5 Ps. Through policy, people, procurement, products, and philanthropy. And so we feel that if these corporations focus on those 5 key areas, that through a racial equity lens, they can start to see some great impacts and create some change internally. Really, one of the things that I also am really passionate about when I'm looking at where we are right now in 2020, with considering all the things that are going on, considering that we are in the state of Minnesota where we're dealing with a lot of the civil unrest we've seen. And when I actually joined the organization was at a time I actually put in my 2 weeks when I was previously working at META, the day that George Floyd's his murder went public. And so I spent that last 2 weeks trying to transition out of working at META specifically with entrepreneurs of color, helping them through COVID challenges. But then as the uprising started happening, and then the targeted nature of white supremacists over on the north side, helping those businesses alleviate some of those challenges. It was a really interesting time. And then while at the same time seeing corporations that I'm going to be working with now in my new role, putting out statements talking about Black Lives Matter and how they want to invest in the Black community. And the question that I kept seeing a lot of people say is what does that look like, right? And a lot of I think right now in 2020, people are fed up with lip service and they want to see action and actual tangible results and sustainable impact and change. So really what I'm focusing on doing is helping these corporations navigate that, connecting them to different community resources, connecting them to different Black-owned businesses and BIPOC-owned businesses within the community, and really leveraging those relationships to increase the trajectory of these businesses. Because one of the challenges that I experienced while I was working at META is that you have businesses that are looking for opportunities, but they don't have those relationships or connections. So really, and then when you look at these corporations, there's a lot of policies that are in place that prohibit and cause barriers for businesses to be able to be successful while contracting with them. So really taking a deep look at the policies and the procedures that these corporations have, even if it's like a net 90 or whatever it may be, because when you look at these companies that are contracting with these corporations and they take 90 days to pay them, but when you're a Black-owned business and one of the biggest challenges you face is access to capital, because the banks won't lend you any money. You don't have any collateral because you may not be a homeowner or whatever it may be, because the homeownership rates are low here in the state of Minnesota in particular, one of the lowest in the country. How are you supposed to create some cash flow to be able to move on to the next from project to project? So these things handicap businesses and Black-owned businesses in particular. And so we're trying to think creatively of how we can put in place some new policies and procedures on how these corporations engage with Black-owned businesses in particular. So that's really a little bit of what we're focusing on right now in a nutshell. And I'm really looking forward to the rest of the conversation and to hear how others feel we can focus on getting through COVID, number one, but also now that I think what this time has really shown a lot of people who didn't want to see it in the past, and now they're opened their eyes to the true challenges that the Black community faces, is that there is grave disparities around the country, but specifically here in Minnesota. And you look at opportunities that we have, kind of what I think liberation looks like. And I was on a call earlier today talking about what does liberation look like for the Black community. And we're talking about, I know I think it was Danielle that was talking about this piece, but the land ownership piece and owning your own buildings and things like that. Those are the fastest ways to build, equity and wealth within a family and within a business. And I think that we need to start to create new policies that allow Black businesses to become owners of their buildings and not be succumb to slumlords and predatory land predatory owners of buildings, right? Just making sure that they're put in the best situation to be successful, and not only from organizations like West Broadway Coalition or NEON or META or NDC, but also the state of Minnesota and the governor's office directly, right? So I'm honored to be on this panel and be a part of this conversation, because I would love what we talk about to be passed along, and we can start to see some change from a policy standpoint.
Yes. Thank you so much, Sam. Thank you so much to our panelists for kicking off the conversation. There's so much meat. There's so much that we need to address. Obviously, we know the challenges that we've been facing over the last 6 months or so during this COVID-19 pandemic, that is not only a health crisis, but it's also fast tracking a lot of an economic recession that was already coming, and also exacerbating it. And I think, as Councilmember Nandi had mentioned in his welcoming remarks, the data is very clear about how that's affecting the African heritage community here in the state, how over 50% of the new unemployment applicants are of our community. And so when we're talking about what does it look like to navigate employment during this time, when it looks like how do, some of the conversations that have been brought up about how are business owners navigating getting access to resources, and then also just the specific situations that we have endured as a Minneapolis community, a St. Paul community in the state, but in particular in the Twin Cities, dealing with a lot of the physical destruction that occurred during the uprising, and how are we navigating rebuilding and thriving in the midst of multiple crises in our community. And so we're eternally grateful for organizations like the West Broadway Coalition that really stepped up and said, look, we are going to navigate this from our vantage point, and we would definitely love to share information on the fund that just went live this week, Felicia. So there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot to navigate in this time, but also thinking about some of the possibilities, some of the things that Danielle has been speaking to. Like, this is an opportunity to really be creative about how we bounce back and how we're resilient. And as ChaQuana was talking about, how can we equip people who are looking to be serial entrepreneurs, and people who are looking to change industries but maintain some level of autonomy in their entrepreneurial and economic pursuits. And so much to dig into. I'm super excited for the Q&A to come. So please, I see some comments coming into the chat on Facebook. If you're tuned into with us through the webinar, also send your questions in through the Q&A as we get this started. So we're going to talk about the work ahead, and kicking off this question and answer section, I'm going to turn it over to Councilmember Nandi. We have some pre-written questions for each of our not our council members, each of our panelists, that he will deliver to our panelists, and then we will also touch on some audience questions as well to close us out. So please keep those questions coming in. So I will turn it over to Councilmember Nandi.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Amber. Hey, Sam, this question goes to you. It's always good to put the guy on the spot. From your expertise, as we look forward through navigating the pandemic and the recession that will persist, how do we ensure African heritage Minnesotans do not get left behind as the economy shifts into likely and more remote and technological-based future?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you so much, Councilmember Nandi. So one of the things that well, I was still at MEDA during my time there, became very apparent quickly, and something that we've always already known is that there's a large digital divide when it comes to the Black community, and specifically Black business owners and everybody else. And it can be a generational thing, but it's also a cultural thing, and also comes down to access and part of that access to capital piece, right? Not having enough of revenue to invest in your technology and understanding how to create a presence online. And what in a conversation I had earlier talking about liberation, one of the things that we talked a lot about physical real estate when it comes to owning buildings, but we also need to talk about digital real estate and how can we start to provide resources that allow these businesses that are brick and mortar businesses, mom and pop shops that are in the community over on the north side, over on the south side, over in St. Paul and Rondo. How can we make sure that in the age of COVID, they're able to survive and have a presence digitally? And what resources and what programs and what organizations can provide technical assistance to create an online presence, whether it's a website, social media, an email marketing strategies, campaigns, things like that. Because really, especially when it comes to the food industry, when we're doing things like takeout and curbside, and in the beginning of COVID, when you couldn't even sit down in a restaurant, now we can do patio seating and spaced out seating internally. But who knows if a second wave comes along, is that business going to be able to survive that without having a strategy from a digital standpoint? That's something that I think needs to be addressed yesterday. So I think that's one aspect of it too. And then even just navigating the pandemic in general. I feel like getting past this situation, if business owners are able to make it through this, I think what we need to focus on as a state, considering the things that the state of Minnesota has been through, specifically the Black community over the last 6 months, we need to make sure we're providing some serious mental health support that's free. Because when you're talking about being an entrepreneur, that's already stressful enough, no matter what color you are. But when you're talking about being a Black entrepreneur and then you're going through a pandemic where 50% of Black-owned businesses are not going to make it past this pandemic, you're worried about catching the disease because you're at higher risk within your community. But then on top of that, is your business going to be able to survive? Are you going to be able to have the resources and get the money to protect your family if anybody does catch the disease? So you're really, and then you're worried about other things like police brutality or just being attacked for no reason. So these are all compiling things that really need to be addressed. And I think that's something that we need to focus on as a council to make sure that those things are being considered, because access to those services, it's already one of those things that we don't necessarily talk about when it comes to mental health. But one of the things that when I was a business consultant at MEDA is I always try to ask my clients how they were just doing in general, not necessarily how their business was doing, but how they were doing. Because if they're not right, then the business doesn't move the way it needs to move. Because when you're owning a business and you're trying to lead people, you need to make sure you're able to lead yourself.
I didn't know if there was space for us to respond or even build what Sam was saying, but I really appreciate you kind of raising how a lot of us are dealing with a lot, even those of us on this panel, right? We're Black folks, we're Minnesotans of African heritage, also navigating. Some of us are business owners and different things ourselves. And so what I've noticed, it's been really interesting in spaces where I'm talking to like funders or philanthropy. And one of the things I have been saying that business owners need since the stay-at-home order and like COVID sort of shut down a lot of businesses, and that was kind of the first huge shock to business owners this year, and all that's going on. And like I weeks where I'm taking phone calls from my business owners, and every day there was at least one business owner like in tears and distraught around having to make the decision on should they close everything down, or like should they wait it out, should they let their credit, is their money actually available for them? A lot of Black business owners actually didn't trust that there was going to be any money available to them from anyone. And so it was actually a challenge getting them to, we had to reach out to folks to apply. Sam, you know this, and Sam, hope we can bring you back, but the Black Business Support Collective was a group of us that formed right after the stay-at-home order, like really under like, oh my goodness, like we have to figure out how we can actually support these Black businesses that aren't getting the funding, don't know it's there, don't trust that it's for them. And then that whole lottery situation happened with the city and the county, after we did all that work to convince people that this money is for you, they threw in the whole lottery thing because they were building the ship as they were flying it too, didn't want to admit it. And so like, I know we're not at this question yet, but like it really raises, like when we think about what we're asking for from these folks, I ask for resources. I think it's been easy for us, or not easy. I think there has been a focus on money specifically. It is one of the resources that we need, but we absolutely need resources for, right here on West Broadway where I live, my neighborhood, Hawthorne, and I need to check the most recent numbers, but we had like the highest cases of COVID in Minneapolis, in North Minneapolis specifically, right? And so when I'm in conversations with the health department, I'm asking why there's only one like sanitary station on this whole 2 miles of corridor, and it's not even over there where the action is. Everybody knows where the action is. You can see it, but it's like tucked away in a corner. And just like really engaging with them around like, what are y'all doing? Like, whose idea was this? And can I talk to them so I can tell them, what's really happening out here? So like the mental health support, just getting back to that, the mental health support, one thing I do know, and it was not even intentional, but I appreciated about that, those funds that came from US Bank, is that they, because of a conversation I know I had with them, I don't know what other people said, but they actually set aside a set of those funds for trauma care for my organization. And they've been the only group or organization or anything that I've said that that's the type of support we need that has offered that. And so that's really interesting. To see how like who's caring about what parts of us in a holistic approach to how do we restore Black folks, how do we give Black folks the space to grieve and to figure out and imagine how we're gonna like solve all these problems that we didn't cause. You know what I'm saying? So thank you for raising that up.
Yeah, and thank you for mentioning US Bank. Actually, they're an organization that we've worked very closely with. In the last press release they just released out, as far as the money that they have released into the community, they highlighted each of the different levels of what they've done, and they've also invested some money in the center too. So we're really appreciative with the work that US Bank has done, because it's been significant, and I think it deserves to be called out. And that piece about trauma care was huge, and I really appreciated them focusing on that.
Yeah, thank you, Sam, for that elaborate discussion. I just learned one thing today: digital real estate. I didn't know anything about that.
I made it up today, honestly.
And it's very interesting that the actual real estate, we are left behind by all the forces against us. Mm-hmm. So on the digital space, it seems there are a lot of conspiracy against us as well. So we have to double our effort. All right. The next question is going to ChaQuana. This is a tough one, and I know you can handle it. As the unemployment rate for African heritage Minnesotans rose exponentially during this pandemic, what needs to be implemented to boost workforce development initiatives and create safe and equitable job opportunities?
Yes, that is the toughest question on the panel with you. Answer, but listen, I'm gonna do my best. But
you got this.
Thank you for that support, sister. So here's my thought, and it is a very unorthodox thought. I am tired of our people begging for 50 cents when we can teach them how to go make $5. And I'm gonna break that down and why that is my policy for how I work with my families, work with my own children, and how I remember to keep the faith, to keep pushing forward for myself. At the end of the day, most of the jobs that have been lost have been front end working jobs, restaurants, nursing homes. It's going to be those jobs that are you're so dispensable that they're going to quickly replace you, right? You still have gained transferable skills from the work that you have done. All of the organizations that are currently on this panel list alone could create one umbrella to pull together resources to help these people, because we already have so much wealth and so much knowledge on this panel list alone. And this is across the state of Minnesota. So to better answer that question, the short end of that is we better support Black-owned businesses so they can hire reliable Black people to do the work. Because ultimately we can keep trying to educate our people and preparing them to go out and get jobs that they're begging for, when in fact we can better support our people by actually buying Black so that they don't have a choice but to hire people that can do the work. That's an unorthodox approach to it. But that's my heart. That's how I feel about it. That is my truth. But there's also other opportunities to connect with other organizations that are not Black owned and utilize our allies to support us, to say, we know that wealth building is a necessity. Currently, right now in Duluth, Minnesota, I am a facilitator of a group called the WEES Working Group. And what we're working on is closing the wealth gap within the African American and the Native American community in the Duluth community in South St. Louis County. And we're being unorthodox on how we're doing that, because we're not just looking at Minnesota for our framework. We're looking at the other states that people are moving from to figure out, why are they moving? What are they running from? What are they facing to where they feel the need to have to move? Because people are dealing with segregation, can't find jobs, dealing with racism, microaggressions, and moving to Minnesota for something hopeful, when in reality, sometimes, depending on the community that they move to, they're jumping from the pan right into the fire. And so this group actually is being intentional about how we are building our framework so that we can better serve those who are moving into our communities, so that they can get jobs that are going to be livable wage jobs. So if anybody else got something to add.
Hey, so you killed that question, huh? That wasn't that.
Yeah.
It was the hardest one.
I will say, one of the things I wanted to say, like hearing you name out some of these things, I think about. So I'm one of the co-chairs for the Minneapolis Forward Community Now Coalition. It's like a cross sector of individuals, organizations that have come together to really do our best at answering that question and help develop a strategy around how Minneapolis moves forward more equitably. And one of the things we did from off jump was center and elevate Black folks. So Black folks and Indigenous folks, which is, we know, a very bold thing to do. And even within that space, as it's been 7-8 weeks in, even within that space, we have to continue to be bold and remind ourselves that it is okay and necessary, not even okay, but like necessary in this moment, to continue to say Black or say, Minnesotans of African Heritage, and be very clear about centering and repairing the historical and systemic harm that has been and continues to harm us and cause a lot of the disparity and cause the disparities that currently exist. And in doing that, it means that we have to hold folks accountable. And so I want to absolutely raise that. Yes, let's not be begging them for 5 cents, especially when they got 5 million, right? That they hoarding over there. So there's that. And then it's really more like, demanding that, you know, things be given back or repaired for what we've put in. I think it's what's really important in a lot of these spaces. And we can get into different details. That's when Mortensen, this rather large developer who has a lot of resources, comes and says that they would love to help support and do all these things as far as rebuilding businesses on West Broadway, and then saying, that sounds great, Mortensen, but we have Tri Construction, that's also a Black-owned business that's been doing this work, that's trying to scale up and all of those things. What does it look like for you all to really support them being able to rebuild their community? Right. And part of that in these discussions that we continue to have. But what I do know is that Tri Construction and Mortensen have a great relationship right now, that they are not only working at helping rebuild West Broadway, they're over there helping rebuild Lake Street too. Tri Construction, our Tri Construction, right? And that's through, like, who are we bringing into the room? Who are we elevating? When there's an opportunity, when we have such an overwhelming amount of benevolence in this moment, how do we stretch that into long-term commitments to not just this moment of uprising because white folks are uncomfortable with what just happened and they're nervous we're going to break something else down, right? And burn something else down. But what does it look like for them to be committed long-term to whatever it looks like for us to be able to rebuild our communities and transform and imagine what that's going to look like, right? We're concerned about gentrification. We're concerned about economic development. We're concerned about housing. These are not new concerns. What does it look like now? What's new now is that we're saying you have to follow us, follow our lead. And what I'm also asking is that you move at the speed of this community versus, you know, your uncomfortable moment because you just, you know what I mean? So, like, I think part of what we all continue to do in those spaces, because I've seen some of us do it in different ways. I have my way of doing it and you all have your way, but like continue to raise that in those spaces and like make the demand, make the ask, tell them exactly what it is you need and you want, and demand that they give you the resources to do it. Don't just give me the money, give me the technical assistance too, give me the support, give me the chances to lose money while I'm trying, like everyone has also had the chance to do, trusting that we will get it right. Everybody knows in business, we tell business people, you know, success comes after all these failures, but that means you get the chance to fail so you can get to success. So we also need that, you know, as a whole diaspora.
The problem is with, and you're 100% right, Felicia, and I think the problem is, though, how from an outside looking in perspective, whenever Black people fail in business, they're considered a risk, right? And it's unfortunate because it's like you can have a business and you can foreclose on a business or a house or whatever it may be, but you look at when white people do it, they can become president, right? And it's like, and so how is that fair? It's not, but we have to make sure that we're looking at things differently as far as what does failure mean. I feel like failure is a learning process when it comes to being an entrepreneur, because you have to learn through experience. You can't just read a book and get it. You have to try it out. And sometimes you can have a great business idea, but it can be the wrong time or you can be in the wrong market. So people need to understand that. I mean, you know, a business idea that may work in the South may not work in Minnesota, or may work in Minnesota, may not work in the South. So it's like you have to understand where you are, understand your market, understand, you know, when the time is right. So that's just, that was a great point.
Yeah, thanks, Sam, for that way you handle it. I truly appreciate the work you are doing, and it's not easy. It's very, very difficult in any way we approach these issues, especially even by buying Blacks. Most people, well, not most, but at least some Black people I know, when you talk about buying Black, we prefer to buy from other races because of the harm they've done to us. So some of these critical issues, there are some of the things we need to do in our own community to start growing while we fight for those big things out there. So the next question I'm going to ask back to Felicia. How can the states engage intergovernmentally to support and leverage our role to aid in rebuilding efforts being led by the West Broadway Business and Area Coalition, Minneapolis Forward Now Coalition.
And anyone else can even comment on how they see, like, intergovernmentally, folks can work together on that. You know, from my vantage point, I do see like this, like, of course, there's this breakdown in communication, whatever the reason is, political, whatever it might be, in like what's kind of happening at the city level, what's happening at the county level, and what's happening at the state level, right?
Yep.
And if we talk about intergovernmental, it like they got to work some stuff out, right? And it's almost like there's only so much we can do. I think part of it is what I know is that the relationship that a lot of us in our organizations are building with the city on the city level in Minneapolis has been really interesting, but we're in the process of building it. But conversations with the county are different. Conversations, you know, at the state level are different, because getting information is one thing. What I do know is that the first time I saw the different levels of government in North Minneapolis caring about North Minneapolis at the same time was after the uprising. And so they need to be paying attention to us, not just in election season, not just when there's like an uprising, but like all the time, because we got a lot of work ahead of us. And just to reiterate what I said before, what we need from each and every one of them is a long-term commitment along with those resources. So asking for money, I think there's a lot of us asking for money and throwing out dollars. It's always like really funny for me, because I'm just like, I don't know, $100 billion. I mean, it's just a lot. I mean, you asking me, you're asking a Black woman, like, y'all owe me a lot. So really, if you want to know, like, I don't know if there's a number, but in addition to those resources, what I know is important in this work is in addition to the money is those resources. What does the technical support look like? What is good communication between us and the county when laws and things change? You know, I heard from the county that there would be, or I heard from the city that there would be some relief around property taxes for business owners, right? Around like if they couldn't make it in time. But I have a business owner right now on my corridor, and now I need to find somebody at the county and ask why they were actually charged the penalty for paying it a little bit late, which they were told that they could do, type of thing. Where's that disconnect? Where are they when it's time for like those questions to be answered? Like those real life day-to-day, this affects my business member who did not get any of your funding type of stuff. And so those particular breakdowns have been so detrimental in our work. And I know in my work specifically, because the folks are coming to me for things that happen like on a county road. And we don't have that relationship with our county. We don't have that relationship with our county commissioner that I'm connected enough to know what exactly is going on without me having to discover, right? And so I think part of it is understanding that we are under a lot of things now, and it's okay for them to be proactive, not just when we're overwhelmed with like trauma, you know what I'm saying? And then to be like, okay, what do you need? Like in a moment of trauma, it's so obvious for you to see them. I think part of it is like really paying attention all the time. And there are those within those spaces that are like going hard for us. And I think part of it is for once we identify who those people are, is figuring out how we can support our people in those positions as well. Because there are those of us who are also trying to affect change, like we call it, like from the inside. So how do we identify those folks and offer them this like type of support to be fighting through all of that too?
I would like to add that access to the federal and state funding, it's kind of frustrating because this money is available. They say that there's millions of dollars put to the side for us to go and apply for as Black-owned businesses, but there's never any technical assistance to prepare Black-owned businesses to apply for that money, and also how to govern that money within their own organizations. And so if Black-owned businesses don't have white allies who are willing to come alongside them and educate them and prepare them and get capital grants and all capacity building grants on their behalf, they're spinning their tails. And so we need more technical assistance on how to even apply for federal and state money, because the money is there. They put it aside on the federal level, on the state level, for nonprofits as well as for Black-owned businesses such as LLCs and different things like that. We just don't know about it because we don't have enough white allies in our pocket that's coming alongside us to support us, to educate us.
I agree with that too, but I also think that a lot of times too, because of that trust gap that we have with these systems that have been in place and how, you know, disengaged a lot of people are, a lot of times we're not even aware, just because we're not having access to those, we're not providing ourselves to have access to those opportunities as well too. So I think it's a little bit of both. I want to be able to call that out, because I feel like the information is there. And if we need to have more Black people, training Black people on how to find this money and how to do this stuff the right way. One organization that I'll call out that's been doing that is, two, Just Law LLC and Social Impact Strategies Group. They've been doing these webinar series, especially during the time of when the PPP loans were going out there. Anisha from Just Law was actually doing webinars on Zoom like every week, training people on how to apply for these PPP loans, because she works at CRF's Community Reinvestment Fund. So there is, I do agree, like allyship is important, but there's also, we need to make sure the people that we have are in these positions have that in order to share the information and pass it down. And we need to also be engaged in these processes and when these bills are passed and things like that. From the political side, because I feel like a lot of us have been so disconnected from that, and that's why we don't know when these opportunities show up.
Thank you, Sam, for that. And back to Felicia, I know that your organization was very strong in pushing Hennepin County to change from loan to grant. I know we fought for them to include our people with all the criteria they put in out there when during this pandemic, when we had some of the assistance from the county. They put in some of the requirements like the number of employees, loans, and so on and so forth. But
remember how we fought about taking out like the social security number and all of that? Did you feel kind of like, I felt some kind of way when they did that, because I was like, this is not what we discussed. We did all that work to make sure that intentionality, and they're like, lotteries, they can't figure out any other way. It's not funny, but like that is, like, I think that is the reality of our work. I think sometimes it's something I didn't really know until I was in this fire, you know? And I think it's important for our people to know what it is when we're putting ourselves out there like that, to raise these concerns, to do what we can to change policy and process and systems. Sometimes weird stuff like that happens, right? But like for me, I think it's important for us to also name that so people know it's happening. Yeah, I don't want to take up too much more space, but I do want to say that the Northside Business Luncheons, which you know, I do with partnership with Neon, which is another Black-led organization in North Minneapolis helping businesses, is a really amazing space where you're going to get anywhere from 45 or more. We're getting like upwards for like 60, 80 folks in attendance since we've went virtual, but like business owners from across the city, right? They're very Northside focused, but across the city. Our next one this month is on the Metro Blue Line, right? And so what we're doing is we're really trying to create that space where we can have both business owners, predominantly Black, business owners being able to engage and interface with, and this one's going to be full of county people. We got some county people to come out, right? But like in this moment, I'm absolutely trying to leverage to bring these people in, and like, yes, now you can talk to them. We don't have to pull everybody away to do a tour of the corridor. You can come here where we've been meeting for the last 2 years every month, right? These business luncheons aren't new, but I appreciate that people's eyes are on us so that they can come and we can all like work together. These coalitions, the Black Business Support Coalition, transform West Broadway. And those similar ways are ways that we've been able to work collectively to bring in resources and also have a little bit more organization around how do we look out for each other in an intentional and a more holistic way. And some of you all are part of that too.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you. Yeah, actually, I have my office in Lyon, so North is the place to have it's happening. I love that. For the sake of time, I'm going to the last question we have this is for Danielle. How can the state as a public entity support the development of cooperative and community-based economic pursuits that build collective wealth, ownership for African heritage people? I think this question just is indicating that we are going to be the next governor.
Oh, whoops. Can you all see me?
Yes.
Okay, something just went different with my screen. All right, so I mean, there's a lot of different things that the state could be doing differently. One thing is, in terms of like a workforce development strategy, they could start working with and incentivizing business owners to sell their businesses if they're looking to retire to the workers. And, when we work with businesses to help them convert to worker owned, it's not at the business owner's loss that they're doing this. This isn't just like a charity case. It often works out very well for those folks that are moving into retirement. And so if the state could help to incentivize, whether that's helping to fund technical assistance for the business owners and workers to be able to do some of that work, that would be really wonderful. To Felicia's point, like technical assistance support for so many of these cooperatives, emerging cooperatives, coming from the state funds to help do that would be really, really incredible. And then like access to state-owned land. So if you're looking at land or property or things like that, why not prioritize folks that want to cooperatively own that land and develop it in the interest of our communities? Some of you know Erica Coleman, who works for the city of Minneapolis in the CPED department, talks a lot about like emerging markets and how you can work to support emerging markets, which is often Black folks, right? Because we haven't emerged into the marketplace like white counterparts for so many different reasons. And so why not incentivize cooperative ownership of land and property through kind of an emerging market model? I think Black folks really deserve, and we ought to fight for, the right to steward land collectively and cooperatively. It changes a little bit about, I mean, people have varying different kinds of ideas about how you're allowed to make money off of things like that. I think some people have to like come up with this idea that they're really into the spirit of cooperation, where they might not make a ton of money off of this house that they own cooperatively. It could be even within their own family, but what it could do is be able to say, this land, this house will be passed on from generation to generation. You might not be able to get rich off of the property, but you might be able to build and develop a very dignified life. And I think having the state be able to incentivize people to be able to cooperatively own housing together would be really great. There's an investment cooperative on the north side called NICE, the Northside Investment Cooperative Enterprise. And this is an investment co-op where Northsiders can buy a share in this investment cooperative, and they can work to purchase homes together that would then be able to be rented, or shareholders could also use those houses together. And it's a way that we could eventually have more cooperative ownership and community wealth opportunities on the north side. I think also the state really needs to look at unfulfilled promises, and I'm going to focus on the north side again. that have been made over time to Northsiders. So there's folks that were forced out of the North Side during the foreclosure crisis. Many folks that lost their houses when they refinanced their mortgages, or just through terrible predatory lending that made them lose their homes, and that would love to return to the North Side that aren't able to and haven't really even fully recovered from them. There's promises that were made after the tornado hit the North Side that the governor made at that time that have not been fulfilled. Folks should look at the statements from when Governor Dayton visited the North Side and saw what types of investments were supposed to be made. Here we are today, and we have Felicia and so many other people leading really incredible efforts during another crisis, and we're still have uncashed checks from years ago. And so I really appreciate the points that Felicia was raising about being really bold. And I think that as people of African descent, we have a challenge to be very bold always right now, and to really dig deep in terms of what are our values, and if beyond like what a living wage is, what is a good life for us? And how are we going to really be able to develop that? And then again, go into these spaces like Felicia said, and continue to demand that, because that is our right. And it makes it better for everyone.
Well, thank you so much for that deep analysis. Truly appreciate the effort you're making on helping workers to own part of the businesses. A couple of years back, I know one of us who had a business that was making up to $50 million, but he was aging, and he had white folks working for him. So we tried to make some effort, but we couldn't get anywhere for the business. I don't even know how it ended, but it's just another big pie that we lost that way. So thank you for that. And with this, I will hand over to Amber to continue to summarize the evening.
Thank you, panelists. Thank you, Councilmember Nandi. That was such a good conversation. Oh my gosh, I'm just like, we're on Facebook, we're in the conversation, just sharing a whole bunch of great resources, shouting out a lot of great people in the community as well that could also been in this space. And so let's continue to build that ecosystem. So we're going to move into our closing. We're just going to have each panelist just give some 1 minute closing remarks and an inspirational send off. I always like to do this at the end. Just what sustains you, what keeps you in the fight. And then I will share some brief announcements from the council to close us out. So first we'll hear from ChaQuana.
What keeps me in a fight? Chess, not checkers. That's what keeps me in a fight. And because I am not a great chess player, but I also recognize that I am very much a queen, and my job is to protect the king. And therefore I move at some. That is of all ages. I love my Black men across the nation, across the country, across the world, and in my community and in my home. And that takes sacrifice as a Black woman to be able to be that bold, especially in this time. That's what keeps me in a fight. I am a mother of 2 young Black men, and I too often go to bed worrying about, if they leave my home while I'm sleeping, are they going to come home? But I also recognize that as a mother, I can't allow fear to stunt their growth. So I have a responsibility to figure out this fight. And the only way that I could figure out this fight was through my natural talents and my skills through economic development. It's something that was in me. I had grandparents who were business owners, and it's just in my DNA. And so I am a firm believer in using your natural talents and your skills and your education to be the best that you can be, not only for yourself, but for your community as well.
Thank you. Oh man, I'm gonna keep that chess analogy in my head. Next, we'll hear from Danielle.
What keeps me in the fight? So many different things, but I need to just be extremely honest that I am in this fight and I won't leave this fight. But this has been a really hard year for so many different reasons. And I'm blessed in many, many ways. I haven't had to worry about my house. I haven't had to worry about work. And it's still been super difficult to see my children navigate this space. So what keeps me in this fight is each other, trying to make sure that as much as possible in the work that I'm doing, that I'm of service to the community as deeply as I can be. And I try to look to, I know Amber and I have both shared our appreciation for Ella Baker as the supreme servant leader. And I take her example really seriously, is that, you know, you work in service of community, of the people that may not have access, may not be seen because they are more important than we are that have access. And so trying to keep things like that in front of me. And honestly, right now, some really good TV is keeping me in the fight. Lovecraft Country makes me feel like fearless, like I can like do whatever needs to come next. So I just need to keep it real that it's just not really easy right now. And we should use whatever tools we can and take care as much as we can when we can, and try and take care of someone else, because that usually helps you to feel better too.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Danielle. Thank you for keeping it real. It has been a very hard 2020. And I'm gonna get on that Lovecraft Country train. I gotta get on it.
You should. It's great.
Yeah. Sam, next up.
So wow, yeah, I echo what Danielle shared. It's been a hell of a year. But at the same time, I have been blessed being able to transition jobs and do the work that I'm doing to address the things that I see that bother me on a daily basis. I can actually be a part of the solution. But I guess what keeps me in the fight is that, so for me personally, I'm a first generation American. My family, both my parents are from Cameroon, and they both came here to go to school. And so growing up in Minnesota my entire life and spending college here and working here professionally, this is home, and I don't like my house to be dirty, so I'm trying to clean it up. And I think that that's pretty simple. Like there's with how many opportunities are actually here in this city and in this state, for the disparities to be where they're at is atrocious. It makes me sick, and I don't like to complain about stuff and not do anything about it. So at least this is me doing stuff about it. That's really what keeps me in the fight.
Thank you, Sam. That's real. Like, I don't like my house being dirty, so I gotta do my part to clean it up. I hear that. And then to close out our group, we'll have Felicia.
Okay, I was sitting here trying to figure out a good mic drop. Y'all said all the good stuff. Echoing Danielle, echoing Sam, it has been something else, and also it has been in some ways really amazing how I have seen community like really rise, like Phoenix. I don't know if anyone's referred to us as that at this moment. Maybe it's too early, but like the way that community has come together, hearing Danielle speak about mutual aid and cooperative movement within our community and how that's like a part of us and a part of our culture. We might not just call it that, but to see that in real life, in action, in real time, at a time when I needed it, at a time when community needed it, has been like really beautiful. And so knowing, like having that real affirmation of the strength and resilience of us. Now, we still got plenty of work ahead of us, right? But having that affirmation in that moment has kept me here. There have been times, y'all, in the last few months where I said, I'm like, I don't know, God, maybe this is a sign that you're just trying to push me out because it's getting really hard. Maybe it's a sign you're making it hard. But it hasn't been that, because every time I've gotten to that moment, it's been somebody like a Danielle or somebody like a Kenya McKnight Ahad or somebody like Danica Leonard or Devon Nolan or even a Warren McLean at times or even an Anisha Murphy who in the right moments told me in so many words that I am not alone in this. We all out here fighting for this, right? And so in those moments when I felt like I could not go on, it is good to know that, like, I don't even have to look all the way over my shoulder because I got a neck injury, but like y'all are there in that way. So in the professional spaces and in the personal spaces. To get on these, and we're really professional because we work really hard to get and to be in these places where we are. But I think community also needs to know, like Amber said earlier, some of us are friends, some of us are sisters, and that energy you see and the way that you see us in these positions now and really pushing for collaborative efforts for us to take care of each other is so intentional. We've been working at this for a long time. Stay with us. So those are the things that kind of keep me going, and I guess that's my inspirational piece.
Thank you. Right, mic dropper. Thank you all. Oh my gosh, this was such an amazing conversation. All of our conversations bring this new just inspiration for me in this work, and I really hope for everyone tuning in that you are feeling more energized. We want these conversations to start as such, but then we can start to take some of these important ideas and continue to work with our community leaders and those who want to work with us to carry that at the state, carry that into policy change, especially a lot of the embellishments on how the state can support some of the work that needs to be done in community, the work that's already done in community. We have the ideas, we just need the partnership and the support. And so I just want to thank all of our panelists. Thank you, ChaQuana, Danielle, Felicia, and Sam for joining us. Thank you, Councilmember Nandi, for joining us. And thank you to all of our viewers who are joining us. This conversation will still be up on Facebook, so please continue to share it with your networks. Just a couple of brief announcements. We do have one more conversation with the council on September 17th. That's going to be focusing on health and wellness. So please, we have our Facebook event page up for conversations with the council where you can register to be a part of that conversation. Super excited for that. Obviously, we're in a pandemic and that will be part of the conversation, but we're going to have a much broader conversation about our holistic health and how the state can support those efforts as well. So please tune in. We also have our upcoming council meeting. So every second Tuesday of the month, our full council board hosts public meetings, and we also invite special guests from the state system. So it's a very great and informative space. And also it's a space where you can participate in public comment to bring any comments, concerns, issues from the community to the council for their consideration. So this month, we are hosting Commissioner Paul Schnell from the Department of Corrections. And so you do not want to miss that. That will be on this upcoming Tuesday, September 8th. That information is also on our Facebook page as well. We also have legislative trainings every month. So Jasmine Carey, our legislative and policy director, hosts these bomb trainings. So if you are trying to learn more about how to navigate the Capitol, how to visit and make visits and speak to your legislator, to understand like how things move at the state system, you want to get on those trainings, and we host those on the third Tuesday in the evening. So the next one coming up is on September 15th. Finally, I just want to give you all a preview to save the date for October 1st. We are going to have a voter education workshop. And so there's a lot of conversations about voting. What does that look like? How do I vote from home? How do I do that safely? Is my ballot going to get to the elections office? What are the needs? Like, I might want to be a poll worker. What does that mean? all these type of things. First of all, we do need more poll workers. We need younger, healthy, more diverse poll workers, because most of the poll workers that normally get hired to help are of older population. So in this pandemic, we really need to think about, a lot of people might not become poll workers. And so that's just one of many things that we need to talk about with our community. And so we're going to be hosting that with the Secretary of State's office, and I'm super excited for that conversation. So more information to come soon, but save the date for October 1st for that event, and make sure everybody tunes in, because we got to make sure our people are ready to vote come November, and really earlier, because we can vote early from home. All right.
And despite what 45 said yesterday, do not vote twice because you will go to jail. So don't do that.
Yeah, please don't commit voter fraud. Please don't do that.
Despite what he said.
Don't listen to him, y'all.
Oh my gosh, don't.
Wow.
But at least don't commit voter fraud. Don't do that. But we have a lot going on at the council, and we are going to need all of your support in the days to come. So I just want to thank you all so much for joining us. Have a good night. Be blessed. Be safe. Have a great Labor Day weekend at the house with your own people. Wear a mask. Socially distance.
I promise.
The State Fair drive-through. What are you talking about? That's what I'm trying to do.
In your own car. All right. Good night.
All right. Peace.
Thank y'all. Peace.
Thank you.